Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thank you for joining us. As you know, we're doing weekly installments and tips for you. My name is Anna Thiele. I'm with Best Results Realty,
Oh, I'm Sade. Hi, everyone.
also with Best Results Realty, and also she has her own law group. And this week's video, we are going to talk about the horrors of real estate. Oh no, scary stuff.
Indeed.
All right. Well, Sade, being in the season of Halloween, you want to hear a spooky story?
Sure, go ahead.
Okay. Today I want to talk about the horrors of real estate. Ooh. Okay. So we have a lot of buyers out there who are looking to purchase a home, and they might not realize that the home they're buying is a flip. And not to say a flip home is any problem or anything,
Mhm.
but the person who inspects it needs to be somebody that you hire rather and pay for rather than the seller. So my horror story, I've got two. The first one is about a buyer who chose to accept someone else setting up the inspection and for them to pay for it, thinking, "Oh, I'm going to save some money. I'm going to have somebody else pay for it." They also were not paying for an agent. They went with a friend that decided to help them out as a favor.
Oh,
So, yes. So those are already two things, which is good, but what experience do they have and how well are they representing? So what happened was they purchased the home, closed on the house, they got their brand new set of keys, and then in about a week or two, they realized the washer and dryer wasn't working. And they thought maybe it was the machine. Nope.
mhm.
There was absolutely no power in the wall to plug in the machines. And how would an inspector miss that? One that's on the seller side, possibly.
Oh,
So this was a nightmare because they had to bring in an electrician, and they had no idea what else was not going to be working.
mhm.
So in the end, they would need to go ahead and get their own inspection. But the horror story is now they had to start paying for repairs on their home that they weren't expecting. And they didn't have anybody to tell them, maybe you should get a home warranty if it's
Mhm.
a resale so that you don't have to pay for any repairs. Any one of those pieces of advice and an experienced real estate agent would guide them. So yeah,
Okay.
that's pretty scary when you're getting your keys to a brand new house and you don't know the condition of everything because there's no guarantee on that.
So
So
yeah, that is a crazy story, and it's never good to have unpleasant surprises, right? Because
for
you do
sure.
have some unpleasant surprises, but they're not so unpleasant when it comes to how much things actually cost, as opposed to how much you estimated them to cost. Let's say moving costs. Some people estimate them at a certain amount and they end up being slightly higher, but that's still an unpleasant surprise, but it's still a good thing that you couldn't really avoid 100%. So how do they avoid something that, similar to what you spoke about? Um,
Um,
Other than, were these people unrepresented? Like, did they
they
not?
were
Yeah.
they were working with a friend, and I don't
Okay.
know the level of expertise the friend had.
I see.
And, you know, sometimes, it's great because you think that you're going to save money on the commission.
Hmm.
Um, and then you're here again, you're thinking you're going to save money because you don't have to pay for an inspection. But really,
Right.
it's going to cost you a lot more in the end if you don't.
So the caveat with this particular story is don't ever waive your inspection. And on top of that, make sure you read the reviews of the recommended inspectors or the inspection companies. You can jump on Yelp. I love Yelp. Or you can jump on Google or Thumbtack, one of those places. Just check them out so that you pick the best person for the job. And it's never a good time to skimp on money, because when you're looking at inspections, none of them really cost more than like 600, $700 for a huge, house. For most homes, it's really around $500. Am I right? Or even a
Yep.
little less. So imagine paying for a property that's worth 500,000 or even $300,000, that's a big investment. So it's worth it to pay $500 to get the job done properly.
Correct.
Yeah.
Do you have a horror story to share?
That was a good one. Yes, I do have some horror stories. The one that comes to mind right now is regarding property taxes. And this is because usually people reach out to lawyers when they've tried to fix things on their own, or they're not sure who to turn to. So they sometimes come to us thinking, oh, lawyers are magicians that can just make people do something that they want. And sometimes it's not the other people's fault, it's lack of due diligence. So when I'm talking about taxes, I'm talking about when you walk through different properties and you pick one that you really, really love. And in your mind, you're thinking, oh, yeah, I can afford it based on what I think the monthly payments should be. So your loan
Right.
estimate, you get to that point later on. You get a preliminary loan estimate from the lender that you've selected, or maybe you selected two lenders. They give you estimates. They're estimates for a reason. They're not the final numbers. So you still have to do your job to find out what really are the taxes on this particular type of property. So the one story that comes to mind is that these people purchased directly from the builder, and they looked online, on Zillow, wherever they were looking, and they saw the property taxes were very, very low. But the assessment was only on the unimproved land, not on the completed build. So your property taxes will then jump quite a bit once you have that contract completed, which is when you finish the closing. You'll see that the numbers are drastically different. And they do give you your disclosures 3 days before your closing. They'll give you different updated estimates, but by that time, you've already passed the period when you could back out, typically. So it's
Typically,
good
yeah.
to know those numbers up front, is what I'm thinking. And in this case, this couple really calculated that they'll be paying $2,500 roughly a month for the mortgage, including the escrow, which I'll talk about a little bit more. And then when the taxes actually factored in, they came up to be about $700 a month, which is a huge difference. It was not $200 a month, it was $700 a month. So their payments jumped up to closer to $3,300, which they didn't like. So they were trying to get us to fight the lender or somebody. And I'm thinking, no, the lender didn't do anything wrong. They have to
No.
follow what the property taxes would be. The assessments come from the county. So you might be able to go over to the county if you're really that type of a person and ask them, what is the true assessment of this type of property once it's completed, which will be probably what's the assessed value of a similar property next door. So you
Right.
can actually do some work, but if you don't want to do all that work, sometimes the agents can help you look at true numbers. But I don't believe agents are responsible for telling you the final numbers because they cannot guarantee what it is. But at least an agent would catch something like that and say, this number is for the builder's plot, not for actual improved land.
Right.
So
Right.
yeah, so
Mhm.
that's
That
one
is-
horror story. And the other one is similar to
mhm.
that, except that the taxes that they were looking at on Zillow when they thought they could afford it, it was based on different types of exemptions that the previous owners had. So the
Right.
assessed amount was not what they were paying off of. They had some exemptions that allowed their taxes to be lower than an average person's taxes. So
Right.
make sure you understand that.
Yeah, that's important for sure. Wow. Well, thank you for sharing that one. My second story that I wanted to tell you was a real shock to me because in this case, I was working with a colleague and I let her know, hey, if you need my help, I'll be happy to help you. I'm a real estate agent. She said, okay, thank you. Appreciate it. Next thing I know, I heard that she had already bought a lot and
Okay.
direct from a builder. And I said, oh, well, that's great. I mean, of course, we're very happy. The horror story starts about right where she had already put in her earnest money, signed a contract, and was excited because this was going to be the lot that they were going to build on for their forever home.
Oh.
And I'm very, very excited about it. Then cut to a couple of months later, and before the building started, then suddenly the builder says, you know what? we're canceling it.
Oh,
Just like that. Was anybody representing? No. She did not know what to do. She was shocked. She and her husband,
okay.
they had to walk away from that contract and the land that she had searched for and finally decided to purchase. And the sad part is they didn't know what to do except to walk away and listen to the builder.
Right. And when you
Then
walk away, what about the earnest money, I suppose?
yeah, so they were losing on both ends. The reason why the builders did it, and if you didn't know this was pretty common. A lot of builders realize, hey, I can sell this lot for more money. So
Yes, because the
something
market
that
has
was,
changed.
yeah, so, and it's still going on. 56,000 home purchase agreements were canceled, which is 15% of all homes under contract at the time, which is the highest percentage of any June on record, was June of this year. It's
Oh,
still
wow.
happening. And
Okay.
this is scary because if you don't have representation, you don't know what you're signing. And
Right.
somewhere in that contract says, hey, we can cancel at any time.
Right.
And so you really want to make sure that you have somebody representing you. They had to start from scratch all over again.
Yes, and it's always the thinking, the people have is I'm going to save money
Right.
by not using an agent. I'm going to save money by not involving a lawyer. And you end up losing more than it was worth, whatever you were going to save, maybe in the end. So that's a good story. It does happen a lot that people think, oh, I can do this. I can read this contract. It's just a contract. Well, it's never just a contract because you didn't draft the contract. From a legal
Right.
standpoint, these builders draft the contract. So they have good attorneys that are working for them. And those attorneys certainly don't have your best interests at heart because they're not
No.
working for you.
That's right. And
So
the real estate agent that represents you does have your best interest at heart
right.
and is trying to save you all kinds of headaches and money problems in the future. So, yes, this is something that you really want. You want to have somebody on your side that is walking you through that to make sure that you're covered financially and you're not coming into any more horror stories or surprises for sure.
This is true. And I'm sitting here thinking, yeah, the stories we hear, usually we're doing damage control, even from the legal side of things. And so I'm sure you're doing damage control sometimes, but sometimes there's nothing to do because they've already walked away,
Right. And you're
other than
catching them
help.
after they've already had their problem. Yeah.
Yes.
But
So, well, yeah, we have a lot of horror stories for you. The second type of horror story that I was thinking about also has to do with money, in people not understanding what they're getting themselves into. So I will quickly, just for people that are not familiar, because you haven't done these transactions yet, even though you're waiting to do them, the earnest money is the money that you put down to show that you're serious. So everybody typically puts down earnest money unless it's a complete buyer's market and that the sellers would accept near zero for your earnest money. But typically you put down 1 to 2% of the purchase price. When they're new builds, you also put down additional deposits if you're making customizations or some selections for your new build. So you stand to lose that money unless you back out within a certain period of time. And these types of stories we're talking about, most people don't know those protections and how to time them. As an agent, let me ask you, Anna, you put things on the calendar, correct, when you're
oh,
working with a
definitely.
client?
Yes, as soon as you have an executed contract, I'm already counting the number of days for the option period, when we need to have the inspection, if there's any financing contingency, when that deadline is as well, and
Yes.
everything else that is important. And then within the earnest money deadline, that is something that stands to make the difference between whether or not that purchase will continue or whether or not you get your earnest money back.
Right.
So
Right.
keeping track of those deadlines is paramount. You
Yes.
have to know what you're doing.
And since this type of purchase is usually an emotional purchase, if it's a personal use type of property as opposed to an investment property, most people are already so frazzled with all the requirements that the lenders have, with trying to pack up to move and all that stuff. So that sometimes things slip through the cracks if you don't have somebody on your side that's keeping you on track and keeping you organized and reminding you of the deadlines. So we don't want you to lose that sort of money, because if you're looking at even if it's $300,000 for the home, you could lose $3,000 right away, and you don't want to do that. So it's good to have somebody on your side for sure. The other horror story that I have to do with money as well is when people think that the interest rate is going to stay the same, even though they have an adjustable rate.
Oh, wow.
Uh,
Adjustable rates? Oh,
yeah,
no.
they
Yeah.
still have those, they call them
Ah,
arms, right? So a lot of people would get into something that they couldn't otherwise get into. Let's say they couldn't otherwise afford the property if the interest rate was 7%. So sometimes the interest rate could start at 5% for year one, year two, and then it kicks back up to 7% in year three. The problem with that is your income might not increase to that level that you were expecting in year three. So some people end up running into trouble at year three. So you were paying year one, year two, but the problem with that is you couldn't truly afford that property, but you sort of squeezed into it because it was such a desired item. And the lenders sometimes don't really care. I'm sorry to say, they don't really care about your situation as much as getting that transaction done. And they get all interest typically in the first 2 years. So
mhm.
either way, if somehow the person is not able to pay, they are protected by the collateral, because then we end up in foreclosure court, or they do a non-judicial foreclosure, which we have in Texas, which does not even require court intervention. So there are some types of foreclosures that don't require court intervention, and those move pretty quickly. Usually when you're 4 payments behind, they start sending you those notices, and then soon enough, there is an auction, because my law firm handles foreclosures, as you know. So we help a lot of people. Tons of people are in trouble. I think it's over 4 million people that are back
Yeah.
behind on their payments
My
overall
goodness. Yeah.
in the US, yeah, right now. So Texas, it's the first Tuesday of every month. They do the foreclosure. So it's better to know this way ahead of time, way before you even get into a contract at all, to truly know what can I afford, not what the lender is saying I can afford if I really push the envelope. So you don't want to afford it to where you cannot have a medical emergency or a car breakdown, or
Right.
you cannot lose your job. You have to have your emergency funds as well. So this is something that I see where people come back and say, oh, I'm sorry, can I do a loan modification? And we go, yes, we can apply for a loan modification, but the law does not force the lender to give us one.
Right.
Yeah. So those are the horror stories that I have in mind. The lenders, they qualify you based on your gross income, but you should sit down and qualify yourself based on your net income, is my
Right.
suggestion. Yeah. What do you think about those with variable interest rates that don't realize it until after the fact?
Yes, I agree. I think this is something that maybe we can do in another installment where we talk about the loan to value ratio, and where we can just give them the tools and they can figure that out at home,
Okay.
and just be able to use that as a tool.
Okay.
But I'm very impressed with what you said about your horror stories, and boy, we don't want any more horror stories for any of our clients. So
No.
please call us if you need any help in the realm of real estate within the contracts, and you're thinking you're in danger of being foreclosed, or you are in there, and you're going to reach out to Sade, or if you need help in representation so that you don't end up signing up for something that you're not prepared for. So please give us
That's
a
right.
call. We'll be happy to help you.
Absolutely, and we'll help you with the legal aspects. I'm going to cover briefly the things to keep in mind in general, but we'll do a separate video, as Anna said. Typically, you have to know PITI, which is your principal, your interest, your taxes, and your
That's sure.
insurance premiums. So
Yeah.
just knowing PITI will get you further when you're thinking to yourself, what can I really afford? Because, nobody's coming to save us once we run into trouble with our mortgage. So I want you to do preventative actions and be proactive. This is why I'm talking about those things. But if you do run into any trouble or a family friend does, then my law firm does work in Texas to help you stop the foreclosure for enough time for you to plan out an exit, a graceful exit, instead of a rushed exit such as a foreclosure, which is pretty devastating. So we could help with that. If the foreclosure already happened in the last few years and you just didn't know your rights at the time, we'll be happy to do an audit of the actual foreclosure process, whether it's a tax foreclosure due to property tax payments that were missed, or if it was a mortgage foreclosure. Sometimes you have equity locked in that we could recover still. So we'll put the information below this video, and then you can contact us for help if you think we can help.
Great. All right. Well, thank you so much, Sade. It was great to speak with you again. And of course, just to remind everyone, at Best Results Realty, we work for you.
Likewise. Thank you so much, Anna. This was good.